gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I figure we have critical mass enough, we might as well get started. So tonight is the third installment of our summer's restoration fair, and we're talking about using architectural salvage and some of the pitfalls that you encounter along the way. As anyone who's done a rehab before knows, it's never as smooth sailing as you think it's going to be, and it's more about how do you pivot and still get your project happening on budget, on time, getting all the things you need to get done with whatever it is that pops up. So we have some wonderful speakers lined up to talk about some of their experiences. So first we have Joseph Woolridge joining us, who took on 49 Park Ave, which is a marvelous building in the Mansion neighborhood. That was an Albany County Land Bank building and a building that was listed on our Endangered Historic Resources list, as it had been vacant for quite some time and had some serious structural issues. So I will let Joseph talk all about his awesome project. Thank you.
Cool. Hi, everyone. Good to be here. Nice to see you guys. I'll just give a quick backdrop about myself. I've been developing residential and commercial real estate for the last 20 years. I'm based out of Brooklyn, born and raised in Brooklyn. I've been watching the Albany market, you know what I mean, at least 10 years, right? And so when I decided to sort of put my hat in to purchase this property from the land bank, the Albany Land Bank, I was already reading articles and understanding what was happening, you know what I mean, in terms of the arc that was about to happen. And so the one thing I didn't realize was the process that went into, a historic property. So the way, I'm also a general contractor, the way I work is the hardest part is getting the permits and lining up, your capital to do the renovation. And the way I'm very aggressive when it comes to construction, that's really my strength. So I call it blitz, I'll blitz the construction. I mean, I'll get 20, 30 guys and just try to finish as quickly as possible. And there's always hiccups, right? But this process, I've learned over the last 3 years, it's a different ball of wax. And so, it's like, you're basically learning how to navigate the different aspects of, of the process. So you have the Department of Buildings, but then you also have all these individual, departments that you have to navigate as well. And I'll just stop. I'll frame it that way and just start moving. So this essentially is the property. You're going to see in the interior, there's a lot of water damage. There's a lot of lead paint that has begun to flake off the walls. And this is because the roof, was in really bad shape. We estimate that the property was vacant for at least the last 20 years. It's one of the last properties of its kind to still be standing in the historic, the historic district of Albany. Oh, am I going this way? Am I going this way?
The clicker isn't working.
Yeah.
Is it this way? Huh.
On the computer?
Huh? Did it run out of battery? The clicker? No, it should be fine. Can we just click on the computer?
Yeah,
go old school?
Absolutely.
There we go.
Absolutely. Maybe if I tip this a little bit so I can sort of get this in. All right, cool.
Perfect.
Excellent. All right, cool. So, okay, now do it here. Okay, so what you see is essentially how it's been for like some time. Those windows were like that for years. Single glaze, really bad shape. But I'm just going to move through this quite a bit of slides. And so you can see a lot of the masonry work needs to be, repaired. A lot of the bricks, they've actually, because it was painted so many times and the brick was unable to breathe, they actually became very porous and just, would flake, turn into basically dust. So, once I'm at the stage where I have the, so right now I'm applying for the tax credit. Once we get approved for the tax credit, then we're going to move forward with the certificate of appropriateness. And once we have that, then we can start the real construction. You know, the facade work, all the interior. So just moving along, some of the details. And this is an example of what I was just talking about. So you can see what has happened to a lot of the brick in the facade. So we're going to repair that. So as you can see in here, you know, a lot of this is all damage that has come from moisture, you know, getting in from the roof, getting in from the broken windows, and essentially just sitting there, you know what I mean, all that moisture, loosening up all of the lead paint and allowing it to peel off the walls, right? And so, you know, for me, the real problem, or the immediate culminating solution was stabilizing the property so that water couldn't get in. Like that was one, but you know, the most important was fixing a crack that was on the side of the house. There was a massive crack where it was basically 3 layers of brick where they were like delaminated. And so it was sort of bulging in the side. So what we had to do was, you know, break off a lot of that masonry work, put in some seed channels and some brace to support that. These are more interior shots of the current condition. So that's it, you know. That's a good photo. But I mean, for me, it's a beautiful house. You know what I mean? And it's really I thought I'd be done after a year. You know, land bank gives you a year to do the work, but I've ended up needing a couple of you know, updates to the time that I have allotted. And at this point, it's really a passion project. A lot of this support because, you know, while the house is strong and it's been there for over 100 years, you know, over time as it settles on the foundation, it begins to need a little bit of help. And so you can see when we started to put these assisted beams, you know, basically like when you add like another rafter and you bolt it together with the original rafter, which is really weak, you essentially like sister it, and as a result, make it stronger. So, you know, the roof was a major problem. After we fixed the brickwork, which you don't have pics of, I wanted to just, you know, put a new roof on. So we peel the old roof off, you know, assisted the beams, and how some photos of that. So, you know, that entire roof, or the inside of the roof, looks like this. And this was work that we were able to do really fast. You know, in my book, it was, once we actually started working, it only took about 6-7 weeks. So you can see more examples of the supports here that we have the slate fabric. You can see where it wants to open up. You know, so we added a lot of supports. And then, you know, we put a new roof in. So this is a rubber roof. This is where all the, you know, the damage, basically, the interior, for the most part, came from, which was the water being able to penetrate that roof over years. You can imagine that. All the snow, all of that weight sitting up there, then, you know, turning into moisture and then being trapped on the inside of the property, it wreaked havoc. And so I'm really happy that the roof, this is, you know, the roof getting done. And then, so essentially, in the phase that I'm at now, just to give you a little bit of more backstory, like I said, I worked with this project for 3 years. The first architect that I had, I thought was good. They basically followed plans for, you know, the emergency work that we got done. And so I moved forward and I did the historic tax credit on my own. I submitted it, everything was good. And the feedback that I got back, it was, in my opinion, it was substantial and it was technical. You know what I mean? It was really over my head. You know, I like to do things right. And so I ended up speaking to Kara from the Historic Albany, and she mentioned to me in passing that the architect that I was working with, you know, was notorious for not providing detailed plans, etc. And so she recommended another architect, you know, another firm that was well known, that company's called TAP, Troy Architectural Planning. And I was excited to work with them. They were too busy. They were doing like 100 houses or something like that. And so TAP recommended that I work with Susan, EDR. And Susan essentially It's a 3-family home with a basement. So it's, you know, it's four.
It's always been 3-family?
It's always been 3-family. And, okay, so this is another shot, you know, of those plans. And so I basically have 2 architects right now. You know, just so you can sort of think about that. When I think about that, you know, when I'm working on projects in Brooklyn, I have 1 architect, and it's, you know, it's essentially one architect in my soft cost, and that ranges about $20,000. That's what you know what I mean, what I put for that number. And you know, just to give you some round numbers, that's like a $500,000 renovation. I'm doing a Victorian renovation, but you know, full gut renovation, and $20,000 architecture fee, $500,000 renovation. Here, that's about $40,000 plus for the architects, right? But the renovation, you know what I mean, including the soft costs, is about $200,000. Just to give you an idea, just like, you know what I mean, just to have an idea. And that other property also has like landscaping. It's a different situation. You know what I mean? This, you know, this, once I have the approvals to work, it's for the most part, it's like, you know, it's 3,500 square feet. You know, once you gut it out and you know what I mean? Like, it'll go pretty fast, you know what I mean? So, just to give you some rough numbers on that. And that's the end. That's the
Awesome.
Thank
you. Sorry, we'll clap. Has anyone got any questions for Joseph?
Where's it going to locate?
This is in the historic mansion district. This is on Park Avenue,
Yeah.
49 Park Avenue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to do lead remediation, right, for asbestos project?
I mean, I'm going to find out. Actually, I just, on the property I just mentioned, actually that's in Rockaway Beach, I just took off all of the old asbestos shingles, and, you know, that cost me between the emergency cleanup, $17,000, and then $22,000 to actually remove the asbestos. That's what that costs. So I'm eager to see, like, because that's a good point. Like, that's going to be one of the first steps before we can even start to fully gut it. Right? So, so we'll see. But yeah, as you can see, the 3 stories here, we have a basement.
Are you the contractor that does all the work?
I mean, so I am a GC, but this is not where I'm from, and so I'm relying on a contractor here that I like. His name is Dimitri. His name is called Dimitri Masonry. He's really active. He's good.
How did you find Dimitri?
He was on the list of contractors that I got from you guys.
Oh, nice. That wasn't a plug for us, I promise.
I spoke to a few people, but I like, you know what I mean? Like, I jive with him really, really easily. I like the way he works, you know what I mean? So it's an easy relationship to have, you know what I mean? I'm very comfortable. Like, I'm generally in Brooklyn, and I can communicate with him, and you know, he sends me photos with, you know what I mean, close communication. He's knocking it out, so I like it.
Does it have any other work? You have carpenters?
I'm not at that
You're
stage
not at that
yet.
level, it's all strictly mason areas?
Yeah, so where I am right now is we're waiting to hear back from SHPO for the historic tax credit. You know what I mean? It's just past the 1 month mark, so I'm optimistic that we hear something positive next week. And after that, you know, now we have the drawings. I think we're going to have the facade work done also this week. Hopefully, we can apply for the phase 2 of the tax credit, and then also, you know, submit for the certificate of appropriateness, and I can go and present. And once I get past that, we get past that stage, then we can start the actual construction.
And this is a 3-year project, just get into this level here?
I mean, look, exactly. So again, I don't know if I'm saying that clearly enough. You know, so you have historic Albany. You know, you have, you know, I forget what's the other. There's another organization that I've been going through. I forget the organization. They do all the research on the background of the
Oh, do you mean like to get the permits, you have to go to the HRC and things like that? Like Historic Resources Commission. So they're the ones who you'll be going to with your plans, and you say, is this good? And then they're like, oh, you got to change this a little bit.
Yeah, there's a person over there that I've been going back and forth with, and just that process of communication has taken me time, right? Because when I look at this property, it's clear to me that this is not original. Just as an example, just so you're going to see something. Like, this is not original. Like siding, you know what I mean? This is a brick, you know what I mean? So there's another detail that happened here, right? And so what I wanted to do was remove all of this and, you know, go with bigger windows. Maybe this is correct. This is correct, but like this clear outline right here, this is not original. It may have been a bay window or something like that. So my thing was like, leave me in the middle, allow me to go with some bigger windows here. And no, that's not what I want to carry back. Right? The thing is, no, even though it's siding right now, and on the other side is sheetrock, right? But none of that's original material. Fill this in with brick and stay with these small windows. And so like that kind of thing, you know what I mean? Like it's a hard one to swallow, but just that communication took months.
Like the back and forth.
You know what I mean? Just right there. So just trying to understand what my limits are in that dialogue. You know what I mean? So
Are you already started this?
no, not at all. Not at all.
It's a labor of love, right?
Personally, so I have a photo of this property from 1981, and that was the year I was born.
Nice.
And you know what I mean? Like just those sort of things. Like I love brick buildings. You know what I mean? The renovations that I did back in Brooklyn, you know, it's 20,000, 30,000 square feet, like gut renovations. You know what I mean? I enjoy it. What I don't like is the waiting. You know what I mean? That process that's outside of my control. It's hard, but it's a process that you know, I wish it was a little more streamlined, especially for properties that are endangered.
Right.
You know, I'm
So
just,
why, when you're waiting for all of this to get done and communication back and forth, do you do other projects in between?
absolutely. Not here. But, but you know what I mean? Like, yeah, back in Brooklyn, you know.
Do you want to do projects up here?
Maybe not historic.
Well, the mine is not historic, but I do have a project that maybe we can discuss after.
Yeah, I would love it. My thing is, I like to get into a rhythm once I understand the playing field, get into a rhythm and move forward. I'm actually still learning. You know what I mean? Like, I haven't been before the board to get the approvals. I have no idea. You know what I mean? So,
It's good knowledge to know how to restore the historical homes. So there is a process. It is, you know, but once, I guess, some people, once they get used to you and see what you can do, it'll start to speed up a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
It's 3 years, really, seriously.
that's good. Yeah. You know, I mean,
if the funds are there, after the pandemic mixed in, right?
Yeah.
Need some kind of discount there.
Say everyone lost a year, right?
Well, you know, his thing is because I know some people who, you know, it takes them 3 years because the funding is not there. You know, it was more than what, as my mom was saying, they bid on more than they can chew. You know, it's just a lot back and forth. But if you know what you're doing and you can get in there and you have the funding and you can just get that thing moving and, you know, everybody communicates well, you know, to say, okay, yeah, I can see no siding, bigger steel windows in there, you know, because I can see that too.
I don't think that would be cool though.
But for that, so you just find a compromise.
Yeah.
You can just,
When was this building built?
I believe in the early 1900s. I want to say like 1918. You know.
Cara, do you know?
Yeah.
I think it was like 1880s.
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 1880s. 1880s.
if you could find the picture with the original detail that they let me do with them, like to replicate what's there.
That's where I left off with them, and I couldn't find it. I couldn't find it, and they couldn't find it.
That's too bad.
And that's where we
Not
got to.
somewhere, right?
You know, that's
What
where
about
we
the
got to.
picture from 1981? Is that a picture of this house?
Yeah, it's on my Instagram.
It was just
Oh,
like
nice.
this.
It was just like that, you know what I mean? You can see the old school cars parked there, you know what I mean? The stairs were actually there, like this is just something that we built, me and my buddy, we came up with, you know, this couple of days. But, for
Did
me,
they have
it's,
stone stairs or?
I have stone stairs, you know. For me, it's not an issue of being undercapitalized, you know what I'm saying? Like, raising money is not, for me, it's not one of my weaknesses, you know what I'm saying? So, again, like what I do factory, I'll completely revitalize it. I put in, for instance, music studios. I do something called room construction. It's a very intensive construction process. And you know, so that's, for me, just so we're clear, like that's not the issue here. The issue here is a little bit more of a bureaucratic, you know what I mean, like dance that has to happen, and you gotta understand who to talk to, and I don't, you know, so like I said, like I'm on my 4th or 5th architect, and I have 2 now. So, you know what I mean?
But next time you do it, it's going to be so easy.
Hopefully, to be honest with you, you know what I mean, like I don't think I'll be able to do like
A bigger lift.
historic property. I really want to get in and get out, and just sort of move on to the next one. You know, so I really thought I'd be done in a year. You know, if not the first year, the second year, but COVID hit. So you know, some things are out of your control. I was also sick at one point. You know what I'm saying? So it just like knocked me out. But
Now, did you get this from the land bank?
yeah, that's right.
Now, you would think that the land bank would want folks like yourself who can come in financially and get the work done and out, because they have such a stock of houses that are just deteriorating. Land bank doesn't have a staff to, you know, move those houses the way, in theory, they thought they was going to move them. So they're just really, you know, okay, we transfer them from the county or the city to you, but they're still sitting there deteriorating. And it could be because of the bureaucracy, I don't know, but, you know, I don't see much of a difference in them having a realtor sell it as opposed to the city of Albany or the county doing an auction selling it, you know. Yeah, you can say you scrutinize it, you know, or screen it the individuals a little bit more, but it's also a long process, you know, because, you know, during that process, you're going to get people like yourself who wants to get in, get out, and get the work done, along with those that, okay, they're HGT enthusiasts.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And they bid off more than they can chew and realize, oh, I got to pay the water department like $50,000. You know, I got to run all new piping in, and presumably want like another $50,000. You know, so I think that it's a combination. I know, you know, I certainly feel what you're saying about the process of bureaucracy there. It really holds up a project. You know, there's carrying costs with these projects. You know, you just want to get in, get the work done. You know, really, really nicely, get tenants in there, and keep it moving. That's the whole purpose of this. At least from my
I
perspective.
agree. I mean, in this time period, I could have done 2 other projects.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? But my understanding is, you know,
Done.
yeah, it's kind of like what you said before. You know what I mean? You do the first one, and then people are comfortable with you. They know what to expect. So, but just strategically, I don't think that. I mean, like I really do like this house, and when I look at it, I see it done. You know what I mean?
Right.
I see it finished. You know what I mean? And so it's easy for me to just keep going. Like I don't know
Right.
if I'm doing that, but it's just like lost opportunity costs. Like the other properties that I see out there, and I'm like, damn, you know, like I could have, that one's not historic, it's similar, it's not as big, it's not as grand, but I could have knocked that out, you know what I mean? I could have easily, like we got the permits really fast, and it was a lot faster than in Brooklyn, so I know like there's another track, there's a faster track that, you know what I mean, like in terms of doing projects that I could be on.
What makes you pick that house?
I sort of watched it for a while. What I like about it is the proximity to the governor's mansion. The block itself, I think, is pretty. You know what I mean? It has a lot of good things happening on it. Like on the other side of the block, the houses that look just like this, but they're a little smaller. They're like 1 story smaller. And so I'm like a big proponent of the idea. You know, you take the ugliest house on a good block. You know what I'm saying? So,
Oh, nice.
you know, so I like that. And then, you know what I mean? When I see what's happening in terms of like money being pumped into Albany, those are the things I want to see. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Nice.
You might be able to find a photograph of the Albany County Hall of Records.
I'm in there. They don't have it.
He's been doing his research.
They didn't find anything, actually. Yeah.
I found building department records for a building that I owned from 1915.
Yeah, that would be.
Yeah, I did. I'll say that differently. They did find some things, right? I was expecting to see photos of the block, especially photos so I could see what's happening with this detail, you know, so I could go back and sort of like give some ammunition there. But I found maps. I was given maps. That was good, you know. Yeah, that's the extent of what I found.
There's pictures in somebody's private collection somewhere.
Oh yeah.
Maybe somebody could look at it, you know,
Yeah.
Somebody, you know.
My husband did it for his childhood neighborhood, and there's people coming out of the woodwork sharing, other people commenting. And
Oh,
saying,
nice.
"This is that," you know.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, maybe create a Facebook page for that neighborhood and start to, you know, promote it
Yeah.
and have other people, because people that catches fire and people start to contribute.
Right. That is a great idea. Well, I think it's going to be incredible when it's finished.
That's like another level of communication, right? You know, so I'm doing all this communication with these different divisions of like Albany and everything, but you know, like that other level of reaching out to the, you know, overall immediate community, like that's another step in the process. That's a good one.
Pictures that have, you know, that hold the house, you know, just lots of cool stuff and connections.
Nice.
Jen, does SHPO give you funds to complete the inside work, or what are they gonna do, which is give you a tax credit?
We're gonna find. I mean, I don't think they're gonna cut a check. I think there will be. I mean, I wish they would. I wish there was more organizations. I was like, oh, he's gonna do something with that. Here's some money, but I haven't experienced that yet. You know.
So it's just a tax credit?
As far as I know now, you know, if there was, you know, someone knows something, you know, like a grant or something, I'd be interested in that. But as it is right now, I'm just over the tax credit, and we're just waiting for them to get back to us.
Nice.
How did you go about drying out the interior of the building once you got the roof finished?
Happened naturally, you know what I mean? Once it was, the rubber roof was on, and the moisture's not getting in, you know, like when I went in there, it reeked, right? Everything was damp. You know what I mean? Like everything was wet, and you walk around, it's just like moldy. And you know, we fast forward just a few months, it's dried out. You know, you cut the windows open and just gradually, it's dried.
Did you roof it? Did you do it?
No, I didn't do it. Dimitri.
Oh, Dimitri does, he does roofing, masonry?
Masonry, he does the full bit. He does the interior guts, you know, the gut renovations. So, yeah, highly recommend it.
Nice.
This is crazy, it's good.
Been good for me. You know what I'm saying? I thought, you know, that's where I'm at. So, like, using what some of his quotes, I put it at $200,000.
Okay.
Soup to nuts, done. Just to give you an idea, I have a quote from him to do the entire renovation, sheetrock, everything, plaster painted, new floors. You know, like we have in Sister, the floors, right? So everything is all wonky, but new sistering, ripping up the old floors, leveling it, hardwood floors, $150,000. Yeah. But the way I would want to do it is sort of parcel out the subs. That's generally how I do it. You know what I mean? Like I'll get someone for the electric work, someone for the carpentry, and that begins to drive the price down a little bit. You know? And if I can, I'll actually see it, so I have more control, and I'll just sub out every aspect, and that allows me to drive the prices down again.
Excellent. Any more questions? Okay, thank you so much, Joseph. We're just going to have to switch.
Those are problems that you're faced with in some of these old houses. Okay, so just do the buttons here?
Yep, just use the buttons.
Okay, so that was my intro. So getting started, I'm going to talk, well, I guess I want to back up and just say, one of the kind of principles of why we like to use salvage materials is because as preservationists, it's kind of embedded in us that we're all about recycling, you know? If we can keep stuff out of the landfills, which is what the Architectural Parts Warehouse is really all about, why should all of that building materials go into the landfill, which is already overflowing to start with, when there are people trying to restore houses? You know, like Joe may be looking for a mantelpiece or a door or something that would go with what he's renovating. And why should those things go into the landfill just because someone's upgrading? or something's coming down. So that said, we kind of look at this whole perspective and this whole approach to building rehabs as it can be more successful if all the architectural parts of the building kind of speak to its architectural period, its architectural style, and we find that makes for a more successful rehab. So starting with bathrooms, the picture here on the left is kind of what you see in most rentals, right? While most people, homeowners, are used to spending a lot of money to really upgrade their bathrooms in terms of marble finishes and tile and, very high-end faucets and fixtures, most rentals don't get that attention. They look like this with, particle board vanities and acrylic tubs and surrounds. This was a two-family house that we were working on with basically the same floor plan, first and second floor, so absolutely exact from one level to the other. This was a second floor bathroom, I believe. The first floor was already gutted, nothing was left there. But what we saw was the porcelain hexagon tile floor, and said, that's telling us that this bathroom at one point in time had some lovely character and lovely fixtures. So we kind of set out to try and find those things of that 1920s era. So the curved bathtub with small pedestal sinks. Keeping in mind that this is a small footprint of a bathroom. I mean, as you can see, there's not much space between the tub and the vanity. So we needed to try and create a big, the perspective of this being bigger, so trying to overcome the smallness by trying to use petite or period fixtures to really accentuate and bring back some character. So we went from that to this. Really all we did was install new fixtures and tile. But now this doesn't look so much like your typical rental. This looks like some place that someone might want to call home. And quite honestly, these fixtures are going to last a whole lot longer than some of the stuff we could get at Home Depot. By putting in a pedestal sink, a really petite one, we opted to then go with a wall-hung shelving, storage unit or cabinet instead of doing a vanity. Again with the medicine cabinet and all that stuff. So that's one way of kind of adding historic character by simply, we needed to renovate it regardless. So we just picked features and fixtures that were historic. Other kind of upcycling ideas is we got this marble sink at Historic Albany Park Warehouse. I found the chest, the dresser on Marketplace. Had my brother pick it up for me, and we kind of retrofitted. We needed to raise it because it was really low. It was like 28 inches high. Put it up on some feet. We had to actually increase the depth a little bit, so the top that we took off, we added to the sides, and we were able to add the fixtures, the plumbing to the back. So that is in a in-progress bathroom right now. Same situation with kitchens. Most of the kitchens that we've worked on, when we've walked into them, we've worked on several that are like 19-teens, 1920s. Not really, really old ones, but kind of your bungalow style, your two-family homes. And oftentimes they have one cabinet that's supporting a sink, or it might be a metal cabinet, like you're going to see in this one, holding one of those drain board type of sinks. And that's all the cabinetry that they have, because they're working around 3 or 4 doorways, a couple of windows, a radiator that's placed in a strange location. And so in order to kind of think about how we can upgrade this and make this a kind of a period appropriate, have some character, but also be functional. No one wants to move into a kitchen that you have no counter space and no storage and crappy old appliances. We wanted to be able to introduce new appliances, plenty of counter space, or as much as we can get into. This is probably a 9x10 kitchen, not very huge. But in this case, we actually even recycled and reused old cabinets. We painted them, added new doors, new hardware, and we're able to reconfigure this on a really tight budget. I think that maybe this entire kitchen with the appliances maybe cost $5,000 at the time. I know. And we're now ready to go back 20 years later and maybe redo it again. But, you know, it has served its purpose. It has a historic character. It fits with the historic house now, which has beautiful unpainted woodwork and you know, just great character. This is another kitchen that we've worked with. This is that two-family house again. Again, both levels, first and second floor, had the exact same floor plan, but kitchens that were never going to work. Why? Because there was a radiator stuck in the inside corner that kind of prevented being able to do any kind of cabinetry to create any flow. You know, they talk about the kitchen triangle, your sink, your stove, your refrigerator. There was no way to really do that here because of the location of the radiators. So after lots of thinking about this and after we pulled up all the flooring, because I happen to have an architect in the family, I said, lay this out and let's think about switching the location where you can see, which was in that corner. Let's take out the radiator and put in a slightly smaller one in front of the chimney breast there. That way we can reclaim this almost a complete U in the layout of the cabinets. And so what we do, we bring the old radiator to historic Albany and we pick up a new one. And before we do that, we have it grit blast and powder coated so that it has this beautiful finish that everyone wants to look at and not hide, right? So this is now the new layout of this two-family kitchen on one floor. Very usable. It accommodated, you know, not super high-end cabinets, but nice appliances, clean finishes, and it solved this problem that for, you know, decades people have been just swapping out one cabinet over another because there's really no way to work around that radiator, the old radiator. Another thing that I actually have a slight addiction to is historic doors. I love to give new life to old doors because I find that doors are one of those things that on a lot of historic buildings get swapped out, and they're almost always the wrong architectural style or period, or they're framed down, they're not the right height or width. And so there's so many doors out there. All you have to do is walk through the Architectural Parts Warehouse of Lexington, and it's rows and rows and rows of beautiful doors. But you can't be scared by chippy paint, broken window panes and such. This is a Queen Anne door that we actually found at another architectural salvage warehouse down in Ithaca. This is Significant Elements, which is the affiliate to Historic Albany, Historic Ithaca, another organization like Historic Albany. Beautiful door. It was missing all of its hardware. It was painted on one side, it was stained on the other side, and missing all of its glass, which made it very portable. It was light. So we took it back, we stripped it. I reached out to a colleague at a local stained glass studio and said, can I come in and look at your glass? And together we laid out a variety of different colors and textures, and then kind of decided where they were going to go, and then he cut them to size for me, and I installed the glass, and he was able to order a beveled glass, clear glass piece for the middle. And going backwards, the yellow is the exterior now with my contractor peeking his face through, with some kind of period hardware on it, ready to be my front door. But like I said, I have addiction to these doors. This door was maybe $25 at Historic Albany's Parts Warehouse because it was chippy, had a broken pane of glass. It had a hole drilled where a deadbolt was inserted. It was missing all of its hardware. But in no time, we were able to strip it down, sand it, you know, replace the glass with some nice wavy glass, install historic hardware in it, build a frame for it, and then install it. and I just love this door. Love it. Because it fits the character of the house that it's going into, which is late 19th century-ish. There's another one. This is early 19th century. This door is just 2 boards that are 16 inches wide each. I love that. This one was expensive. See, it was $125. You know, lots of chippy paint, but once stripped off and the hardware was cleaned up, it is gorgeous now with this new paint finish and its new opening, and it kind of fits an 1805 house. That is where it's sitting now. But doors are not my only obsession. There's also windows. So when we bought we have a little 1920s bungalow, and when we bought it 20 years ago, all the bedroom windows had been replaced with plastic or vinyl windows that were already 20 years old at that time. Now, plastic windows don't usually last much more than 20 years. So we spent the next 15 years looking in Historic Albany's warehouse in their window racks to try to find the right configuration, the right size, and in decent condition that we could eventually, one by one, replace those windows. And these were the last 3 that were done. On my husband and our anniversary. We spent that day doing this. So this kind of shows you the window racks that constantly in search. The before. Those are the vinyl windows that no longer stayed up and no longer stayed down unless they were locked in place. And during and after, from the inside, before it turns all painted. Here are the vinyl windows on the porch ready to go to the curb. And what's so nice about putting old, restored, original wood windows back is then they can match your color scheme. They don't have to just be white plastic. You know, they can be painted on the inside and on the exterior. They're fully weather stripped. They work like a charm with a finger because they're weighted and on place. Wood windows are not the only things, though, being replaced and salvaged. More and more people are starting to salvage steel windows, which I'm happy to see. I'm happy to lead the way. In fact, the windows up here on the top, those of you that know the Spanish bungalows on Woodlawn and Hanson and Rosemont, these windows came out of one of those bungalows, and fortunately one of our clients lives in one and told her neighbor, we'll take those. And then we took them from them. And we happen to have just been working with a small steel window restoration company down in Poughkeepsie that not only totally repairs, restores, and reinstalls steel windows, but salvages them. So they have a whole collection, a whole stockpile of steel windows as well. So between what we had from Salvage and what we were designing in a house and what they had to offer, we were able to come up with 7 windows at the top right to be restored, fully restored. That means stripped right down to bare metal, any welding of any repairs that needed to be made, all new hardware, hinges and handles, and then reinstalled. Those pictures don't do it justice, so again, I wanted to show you. This is another set that was in their warehouse that they said, well, we have these. I mean, look at the broken glass, and it's rusty, and it's just, but what's so cool is it's got a transom window and 4 operable outswinging casements, and they're going to be beautiful bedroom windows. So that's fully restored with beautiful brass stays and stuff. So there's a lot of opportunity here with salvage, and you can tell I get a little crazy about it. I'm a little giddy. One last little bit on windows. These windows were coming out of a house that was going to be kind of dismantled and rebuilt. So not only do we often salvage the sash, so we salvage the 2/2 sash. You can almost see in this middle picture just how wavy those 1850 windows were. But we also salvaged the frames so that there was no need to rebuild frames for them to go back into. These were not these were not, the first frame does have pulleys, but the other ones were all spring pegged. They didn't need to have any weights and pulleys because they're so light. But you can kind of see before, during, restored, and reinstalled. So windows and doors kind of lead me into the fact that we can introduce salvage into the interiors of our houses. A lot of people do that for decor. You know, it might be a mantelpiece, it might be a window hung on the wall as a frame, but character defining features in terms of exterior elements is really one of those things that I spend a lot more time thinking about, because I want to make sure that if you're restoring an 1880s house or a 1920s house, that the features that are on the exterior reflect that the doors match, the window style matches, and architectural elements. For example, these are cornice brackets that came off a building in, I think, Altamont that was being taken down. And you can see they were super weathered. I mean, they've probably been up there since 1870s or so. And because they're put together, the way they're kind of fabricated is there are 3 layers that are kind of nailed together to give you this texture and depth to them, which means that they were also coming apart. So they needed to be reinforced with some wood glue and some finish nails and sanded and puttied and primed and repainted. But they look pretty darn good after the fact, considering they're 150 years old, and they will help to establish the look of a building that's being restored to that same period. On that same note, these are like a canopy corbel that's holding up an entry canopy. I have a really funny story about this. So this picture is a building down in Hudson. It's the historic Oliver Bronson House, which is in outside downtown Hudson. It's actually a client of ours, but in previous phases working with other architects, they had kind of stripped away anything that wasn't of their earliest construction date. The building was built in 1811, so these were clearly from 1870s, 80s or so. As it was being renovated. So they took those off and they stored everything in a garage that might have had some value or character. And when we started working on the project, the director said, "Oh, we have all these architectural parts in this garage." And I said, "Well, you should donate them to Historic Albany Foundation." So they called Tom up, and Tom came down with the van and loaded all the stuff up. And probably a week later, or maybe a couple weeks later, I'm walking through the parts warehouse, which I do on occasion, and came across these brackets or these corbels, and I thought those are perfect for what we're working on, not meaning the Bronson House, but another project. And it was only when they were being loaded into my car that Dave told me, "Oh, those came from the Bronson House." I'm like, "That's my project. I told them to donate their stuff." So kind of full circle. But again, these took a little bit of labor of stripping the paint, reinforcing any loose wood or delaminated wood, and repainted them. And then this is them currently installed. So this is a project we're currently working on, which kind of shows you a lot of the things the elements that we were talking about. So we got the restored original windows from this house reinstalled. Oh, my arrow kind of. Oh, there, never mind. So we got the cornice brackets installed, came from Altamont. We got the windows that came from this house. We have the corbels for the canopy that came from Hudson. And we've got doors that came from Ithaca and Historic Albany and stuff like that, all to try to help, reinforce the character of this architectural style and make this successful. This is in a historic district. This, the older part of this house dates to 1805, and it's really was important that we not just put up a modern house with modern, materials that would might not even last as long as something that's already 200 years old. So that was this has been one of our biggest projects where we have incorporated a ton of salvage. But all this is to say is that there's still so much more out there coming in daily to the warehouse. Here, there's salvaged architectural historic parts, retailers in Rochester and downstate in the Hudson Valley and in Ithaca. They're all over the place. But, you know, if you're looking for that little bit of something that's going to help give your interior or exterior of your historic house that actual added character and to match the character, this is a good way to go. I mean, none of these parts cost much. I think that maybe those brackets and that marble sink may have cost maybe in the $300 range, but everything else was way under that. So that's my spiel. How many questions? Tim.
Species of wood are those brackets?
The big ones, or the? I think that they were a cedar or fir or hemlock.
Back when those buildings were built, you know, they really thought about how somebody can maintain these
Yeah.
things. They didn't think about buying
Yeah.
all apart.
Well, it's interesting too with the canopy corbels. You could tell which was the outside face and which was the inside face, and we kind of swapped that a bit so that the weathered, even though we put plenty of coats of paint on it and sanded that weathered surface, we wanted to then further protect it by having it be under the sheltered part of the canopy. The old one that was taken out, I don't know. I mean, it could have been a bath. I mean, it was like that when we bought the house, so I have no idea. It was probably a bath fitter or I don't know. It was just acrylic. That would be me. I cleaned it up. But fortunately, when we purchased it, it was still it was in pretty good condition. I have seen, you do see tubs sometimes that have some rust spots, and there are companies out there that will help re-enamel and even do just touch-up of that finish. Oh, good for you. Yeah, that's great.
And the bathroom downstairs is still small, compartments around it, and we have file kind of stored over. But the sink, I mean, smaller things.
That's so
Now the toilet was placed in some
Yeah.
It's placed down south of Newburgh that came up and redid the sink for us.
Oh, in a different color too?
White.
Wow, in white. That's great.
It's been years, and we're not used to that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's perfect. So
That's good to know. Was it Paraceram?
otter something, I'll have to look it up, it's down in Newburgh, they came all the way up.
That's great.
It was expensive, but it was, I mean, the stuff we looked at was such crap that it would have fallen apart. This is the same fabric,
Right.
same thing. And
Well, one of the things I didn't want to totally overwhelm, because I know we didn't have a whole lot of time with a ton of images, so I kind of kept to residential projects. But one of the things I wanted to go and grab a photo was of the restaurant in Center Square, Dove and Deer. Have you been in? If you haven't, go in their bathrooms. I love their bathrooms. Their bathrooms have like a pink sink and a green sink and a blue sink, and they have, it's really wonderful because it kind of is fun, but it shows you what character of these old fixtures. I mean, there was a period when the wilder the color, the better, and people really wanted them. I mean, I do tend to like the white, because that's kind of the era I like, but you can get fun with it. I always kind of joke that I'd love to give my kids a very colorful bathroom, if and when we're at that point. But yes. Oh, and I remember there was a lavender one that was, it was so good. I loved it. It went really fast.
Now, I noticed you installed a new toilet in that part.
The case. No, that wasn't an old one. That was.
Why didn't you get it all?
That is an old one. That's a case tankless toilet from the 1930s. They're my favorite toilets.
I see people, or Parks Warehouse buying these old toilets, and they use a terrific amount of water.
Yeah.
I mean, I replaced the toilet in my house a few years ago. It was 40 years old because I'm cheap and I don't want to spend money on a new toilet. But before I got rid of it, I measured how much water it was. Over 4 gallons every time you flush it.
Right. No, and there are tricks to that. Like, you can displace the water so that the float still is
Well,
up high.
the new one uses 1.2 gallons.
Yeah. No, I know. The issue that I have, my husband and I have this conversation all the time. Okay, and we probably have put in up to 10 different toilets in 10 different places. The problem that we have had, and that's, I know this is not across the board, is that new toilets typically have plastic parts on the inside because they don't want them to pit or rust, but they don't hold up like the brass does. And so we've gone to the extent of trying to find vintage plumbing supply houses to, find those parts. And so it's kind of, you're right, like in 40 years you may be replacing that because, those things may not last. It's low, but it's not small. It's got the same rough, and everything stayed in so the drain pipes for everything, we didn't have to pull up the floor, thank God. Everything stayed in the location as was originally built, which is why we wanted that curved tub, because we didn't have an alcove. We didn't want to have an alcove tub. We needed that rounded corner. Right. I think that may have been in a lot of these small bathrooms. I think they did, and then you're juggling, how you're dealing with the shower. A lot of these places didn't have a shower originally, just the tub. Like the ring, yeah. 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 I mean, this is tricky. I think we found 2 of these exact small pedestal sinks at Silver Fox before they closed. Yeah. And I know the Historic Albany got a lot of their stuff when they closed and liquidated, but it was just the right size. You can't find a modern sink today that's not going to be 24 wide and 24 deep. I mean, it's really hard.
Stripping. What is the best product you find in strip to wear?
So
Take care of it.
we use heat to strip. We use a device that you probably can't find on the market anymore, but infrared heaters, paint strippers are becoming more popular, and there's a lot of variety out there now, and that is the way to go. The idea is that it softens the paint enough to be scraped without raising it enough to release any lead vapor. So you want to have a respirator or a mask on if you're going to be doing a ton of this, and if you're doing a lot more dry scraping. But what this does is it kind of liquefies the paint. It makes it want to rise off of the wood. And if you use I use carbide blade scrapers, draw scrapers rather than push scrapers, and then mineral spirits to kind of smooth anything else, and sandpaper, and we always use oil paints. Oil primer, absolutely. You can go over it with latex, good quality latex paint, but for windows and doors, things that are going to be exposed to the exterior and get a lot of movement, touching, you're really best off using an oil-based paint. They're just more durable. Oh, good to know. Okay. And if it's going to last, then it's got the life cycle costs really spread out. I'm big on that. Any other questions?
Yeah, so
Yes.
I'm wondering, are you looking for tenants when you finish with this project?
Yeah, I mean, and they stay rented. We've been pretty successful with our tenants tend to be long-term, repeat renewals, so basically. And the two-family houses they're small, 3 bedrooms, but that's what's nice. If you have a nicer bathroom and a nicer kitchen, then you don't feel like you have to retreat to your small bedroom. And we're also big proponents of the open front porch, so they have that space, especially all last year with COVID, everyone was out on their porch, so it was nice to have. So. Anything else? Really? No. Well, we're an architecture firm. We just, most of the projects that we have, I've demonstrated or illustrated are our own kind of personal projects, because we do have some rental properties of our own. We used to, once upon a time, my husband has this split identity, thinking he can be a contractor and an architect, and I told him at one point, you need to pick one. You can't do both. And so we're quite busy now with architecture, and the key is finding a good contractor. But if you can kind of explain, and we need more in this area, but there are good contractors that think outside the box and can say, listen, I love the character and I want to, keep good quality materials, but this is the problem I'm trying to solve. Yep, and that's very common. That's good.
I'd imagine, like how you finish your houses, like living in this type of space is a lot more pleasurable.
That's our intent. When we go into restoring or renovating a rental property, we always kind of say, would we want to live here? Would we live here? Even if it was, 30 years ago when I was actually a tenant, would this be a place that I would be attracted to and rent? And that's kind of always been our MO. But at the same time, we do have a budget, and this is dull tile. It's not expensive tile, but it's like it has that wow effect when you do it the right way. And like I said, you're using Salvage. It's not super expensive. You can get a clawfoot tub that's brand new for $1,500, $2,000, or you can go to Hart's Warehouse and you can get a clawfoot tub for $300. So it's the kind of, we try to blend as much as possible new materials and old materials, so that in the end, when people look at the kitchen, there's really not a whole lot that's old here, but it has an older character. The window, the trim is all old, the floors are old, the radiator's old, but everything else is relatively modern. So. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us. All of these materials from tonight are going to be online, so if you need to reference any of Kim or Joseph's photographs, they'll all be online. And if you have questions, please feel free to email us. We can connect you to either one of our speakers or from previous events and things like that. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.